Welcome to a Healthy Push podcast. I'm Shannon Jackson, former anxiety sufferer turned adventure mom and anxiety recovery coach. I struggled with anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia for 15 years. And now I help people to push past the stuff that I used to struggle with. Each week, I'll be sharing real and honest conversations along with actionable and practical steps that you can take to help you push past your anxious thoughts, the symptoms, panic, and fears. Welcome. You're right where you're meant to be. All right. Welcome, Haley, to a Healthy Push podcast. I am so glad to have you here with me.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on your podcast. I know I told you I've listened to many of your episodes before, so I'm just so happy you reached out. I'm excited.
I love it. I love it. So, Haley is on Instagram as your anxious therapist. And when I came across your platform, I immediately thought she gets it. And I, of course, thought she has some lived experience there, like not just a therapist, but a therapist with lived experience. Because just the way that you explain things and the way that, it's simple, but it, really resonates. And I'm sure, people who land on my page, I get all the messages of you get it, you have the same thoughts or the same feelings. And that's, what I felt when I came to your page. So I'm excited to talk to you about health anxiety because it's something that I know many people in my community struggle with. And it's not really something that I ever struggled with. I mean, I had bits and pieces, but not anything I don't know, I don't wanna say extreme, but so let's just start in general of I'd love to have you share, what it looked like for you, because I think everyone's journey obviously looks different, but, what did health anxiety look like for you?
Yeah. So, growing up, I mean, I struggled with health anxiety for a long time. I would say I struggled with general anxiety around that time period or that time frame as well, but health anxiety, I struggled with it since I was young. I think I remember the one of the first memories when I was like 5 or 6 years old. Oh, no, sorry. I might have been a couple years older. I'm thinking of a different memory, but I struggled with it for a long time. But this memory that I'm thinking of, I I have not told many people this story, but um, I this one night I thought I was choking on a chicken bone.
Mhm.
I got a random intrusive thought and that I was choking on a chicken bone when I was younger. I think it might have been 7 or 8, I don't remember, but I was really afraid, and I could not get that thought out of my head, and I was so worried. I felt like I couldn't swallow, so I was just
Mm,
so hyper fixated on my bodily sensations. I was like, "I'm choking, it doesn't feel right." I felt like I had, like, a lump in my throat, and it was right after I had eaten dinner with my family, and I remember my parents were trying to assure me that everything was fine, and of course you didn't choke you didn't swallow a chicken bone, you're not choking on anything, but I had convinced myself that I did, and I essentially worried so much about it, I sent myself into like a full-blown panic attack from what I remember, being
mm,
that young. I was just panicking. I was really worried. And my mom didn't really know what to do. So we ended up going to the doctor. I can't remember if we went to the doctor or the emergency room or something. I don't know. And they did an X-ray. Like, I had an X-ray
oh my
done and everything, and they were like, "Nothing is there." But I was so afraid and so scared of it, and I kept convincing myself that I had swallowed a chicken bone, that I was gonna die, and it just so that was one of the first memories that I had, and at the time, I didn't realize, like, that could be related to health anxiety. I just was like, it was just sort of one of those memories I had, but then it was a terrifying experience, and I think people who struggle with health anxiety, I'm sure, have had that some sort of experience where they've convinced themselves something was terribly wrong and that they were dying, and then, they end up going to the emergency room or the doctor or something, and nothing can convince you that you're okay. Nothing can convince you of that. So that was one of my earliest experiences with health anxiety, but then I would say it just sort of snowballed from there. And I remember I would constantly obsess about my health and I think something's wrong with me. What if I have this illness? What if I get this? What if I get cancer? What if I die? And, it just, I could never feel, like I said, I could never feel assured. And I remember constantly seeking reassurance from whoever I could get it from. And it's like you'd go to the doctors and you get blood work done and you get things done, but nothing, you'd leave there and just feel okay, you feel like a slight bit of relief, but then you still in the back of your mind, you think something is wrong. Like you just constantly obsess about not only your health, but just your bodily sensations all the time. Like I would just obsess over my breathing. I'd obsess about my heart. I'd obsess about whatever symptoms were happening. I would just sort of obsess about it. And also, I remember growing up as well. I'd read stories about people dying young, and oh, this person was this age and they died of a heart attack, or they died from this super rare illness or disease, and automatically you think that means I'm going to get it. I know I'm going to get it. If this happened to this person, how do I know that's not going to happen to me? How do I know that I'm not going to get a brain aneurysm? Or how do I know I'm not going to get this disease? What if I have this disease already and I just don't know it yet? So you're struggling and suffering from all of these intrusive thoughts, obsessive thoughts, and that was sort of how my life went for a long time with health anxiety. And um, I'm sure there's more stories of that, but I mean, I struggled with it for years. So it was
Yeah.
more than just general worry that I had on top of that. It was just constant obsessive thoughts about my health and being afraid I was going to die in my sleep.
Mhm.
Um, all the time. You just never get any sort of reprieve. And on top of that, I would also not only be afraid for my health, but then the health of other people in my life. So I would always think something is going to happen to them. Are they healthy? Are they okay? Are they going to die? So essentially, that was those were a lot of the things that I struggled with, and it was definitely hard being a therapist and struggling with that as well. I was like, how can I possibly help other people when like what if they find out that I struggle with anxiety too? And being a therapist, essentially, in school you're taught you should sort of be a blank slate and you don't want to share too much information about yourself. And but I learned over time that that actually helps people relate to you so much more if they know that you've actually been there and you've struggled with it. So
Yeah. I mean, so much that's what drew me to you and is why we're having this conversation. I mean, goodness, you shared so much. I appreciate you sharing all of that. I definitely know you've had to have gone through your own challenges with being a therapist, like you said, and wanting and thinking maybe you have to keep this stuff in and you can't share it. And God forbid people know that, right, you're a human and that you struggle with things too. And I think it just is so helpful, not only to yourself, but to all the people who you come into contact with and support and treat, and just the benefits that it brings to others is huge. So, something that you said so many things that resonated with me, but this, it started with one experience. And I think for so many people, they can recall like one traumatic experience or one experience that was really overwhelming, and it just kind of stuck with them from there. And, like you said, there was sort of nothing that could convince me that I was okay. And I feel like this is a lot of what anxiety in general, but of course, health anxiety thrives off of is like, you have to know that you're going to be okay at all times. And like when you don't know and there is uncertainty there, you just can't be okay with that. And that I think is really the crux of like how you kind of get through it too, is learning to be okay with that uncertainty and not having to have it at all times. But that is so hard, like you said, when you're so attached to the feelings.
Yeah.
But I feel, like I can't catch a good breath. I feel like I can't swallow. I feel like I just felt this weird sensation in my body. And oh my gosh, like, do I have cancer? Like, and it's not just the feelings, right? It's, we get so attached to the things that we take in, like the things that we hear and see and read. And like, I'm so glad that you said that too, because I think we're, many of us are very sensitive. Like, myself, I read an article and I'm like, "Oh gosh," and I start to get some thoughts, but it can be really, like, hard because, it starts with the thoughts sometimes, but then it quickly leads to the feelings, and the feelings are so freaking convincing. So it's like, what do you do? Like, what do you do with those feelings? Because they feel so real and scary.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, the thoughts and then the feelings, they're just so intertwined. And then comes the behaviors as a result of I'm feeling super anxious, I'm feeling really scared. And now what do I do to help myself calm down from that? Like, how do I alleviate this anxiety? So then it sort of
Mm.
turns into this cycle of doing certain behaviors like avoidance or compulsively checking your body, scanning and monitoring your bodily sensations, and Googling your symptoms and asking for reassurance, and all of those things that you're trying to do to alleviate or those uncomfortable feelings of anxiety and uncertainty and fear are not they're not long lived, basically. Like, they're very short lived. You might get a small ounce of relief, but then immediately comes those feelings again. So really, like you had said, being able to sit with those uncomfortable feelings of uncertainty, and it's uncertainty and then the need for control, right? It's like I need to be able to control the outcome, and if I don't address this symptom right now, if I don't go to the doctor, if I don't do this thing, then I'm going to miss something and I can't prevent this bad thing from happening. So, you're really trying to learn to acknowledge how you're feeling in those moments and saying, "Yeah, I'm scared." And it's normal to feel scared, especially if I'm reading an article or if I'm watching a TikTok video about somebody who said they found out they had cancer. And there's so many videos on TikTok that are showing that now, and it's really hard. So you want to just sort of take a step back and acknowledge that, yes, I feel afraid, but that doesn't mean I have to do something about it. There's that sense of urgency, like, because I'm feeling so strongly, I have to do something about it. I have to address it. I have to prevent something from happening. But you just want to slow down and take a step back and not go forward with, like, I need to address this right now. I need to
Yeah.
fix it, get rid of it.
Right. Oh, I'm so glad that you said that. It is, and I think too, when you're struggling with something like health anxiety, you don't often see that your response is very natural to like seeing a diagnosis of cancer on a TikTok. Like you immediately have this like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be feeling this way, or it causes you to really spiral. When for somebody who doesn't even struggle with anxiety or health anxiety, like for me, that would send me into a space that's not super healthy. And like you said, I have to slow down and like, I don't need to do anything about this, but I should probably just like get off of TikTok and stop going down these holes right now. But, it is that it evokes these really strong feelings of I have to do something about it. And you really are convinced. It's like you said at the beginning, it's so good. I went and got the x-ray and it kind of led to this short term relief because I did something. But it didn't take it away. Like, it didn't take the thoughts, the fears, and it didn't stop the things from continuing to pop up. And, like, it's just I love how you talked about the behaviors, right? Because I think that's where it gets all of the power, a lot of the power is from, "I have to do something about it, so let me then start to Google, what is the likelihood of me getting this type of cancer?" It's that reassurance, I know just in my general anxiety journey with panic and agoraphobia, my go-to is reassurance seeking. Like, if somebody can tell me that I'm going to be okay, and like if somebody can tell me that nothing bad is going to happen, if I just know for sure that like I'm not going to pass out, everything will be okay. And I never got that. Like, I never, even if somebody said, right, Shannon, that's so unlikely to happen. Like, you're going to be okay. Maybe I felt a little bit better in the moment, but, like, it didn't take any of that away. Like, I kept cycling through. So, I think those behaviors are so important, right? But it's like, how do you I think a lot of people know, right? Like, it's not super healthy for me to be Googling. It's not super healthy for me to be checking and scanning, but, like, how do I not do that stuff? Because when the feelings are there, they're pretty darn convincing. Like, I do have to actually do something with this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that because I always get those questions or people are asking, how do I stop doing that? And really, the first step you have to take is to be aware of when you're doing it in the first place. And I tell people that all the time, are you even aware of all of the times you're checking? If you're checking your pulse, 100 times a day, are you accounting for those 100 times that you've done it? Are you aware that you're doing it? Or has it become such an automatic behavior that
Mm.
you aren't even aware that you're doing it in the moment? So, really catching yourself when you're well, first catching yourself while you're doing it, and then it can eventually lead to, well, now I'm noticing I'm having the urge to do it, and I'm choosing not to do it. So what I always tell people is to just, notice that urge when it comes up, notice that feeling, but then you sort of shift your focus and attention to something else. It's like, "Oh, I really wanna Google this thing right now. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna try to put my phone down or my laptop down, and I'm gonna go take out the laundry, from the dryer. I'm gonna go wash the dishes, or I'm gonna go do something else that I was gonna do beforehand before I came across this TikTok video, or before I started noticing my heart was racing and now I need to go check my Fitbit. I would even say take off the Fitbit and the Apple Watches because that can help prevent you from checking because then you don't have the thing that would let you know what your heart rate is. Even if you're checking your pulse on your neck, you don't know, or you're feeling your chest, you don't know what your heart rate actually is, and that is a place where you want to sit with that uncertainty of I don't know what it is, and I'm just going to have to sit with that without checking.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's so good because I think, like, everything that you said, spot on. I think, you have to slow down. You have to be aware that you're even doing these things because I think oftentimes, when I start off with students in my program, they're especially like safety behaviors. I don't really think I have any. And, the obvious one always comes out as avoidance, but then when they really give it time and we start discussing it, it's like, oh, nope, I actually have like 5 or 6, or it's more like 20 behaviors that I'm doing that
Yeah.
are reinforcing the anxiety, and it's so unintentional. It's so you're just really trying to protect yourself, and you really think that by having this control and by knowing, it's going to somehow help you in some way, but it causes you to be so stuck. And so slowing down and having the awareness of just when you're doing it, like, huge. I mean, it's massive. And I think we do often overlook that step because we're on autopilot. It's just like, oh God, I have that feeling, and like, what do I do about it? And it's just like it so quickly happens that you don't even really recognize that you're doing it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you said, you just sort of do it automatically and it becomes a habit of checking, monitoring, Googling, reassurance seeking. And I remember I would do reassurance seeking with like my husband and I had to stop myself. Actually, well, he sort of helped with that too, because he would not give me the reassurance, which
Mm.
he would help slow me down by saying, "Okay, let's, like, break this down. What's really going on? Do you really," like, helped reality check me for a moment, which I think can be helpful if you have somebody that you are constantly asking for reassurance, and for them to not give you that reassurance, it can feel really hard, but actually that would help someone in the long run not to give reassurance. But then, when he would do that for a while, I would catch myself when I had that urge. I was like, it's like that millisecond before you speak, or even if you say, I have a question. And I'm like, nope, hold on. Wait a second. Like, I would have to stop myself. Even if I started to engage in that behavior, it's okay to stop yourself for a moment and say, okay, hold on. Am I going to finish this thought, or am I going to choose not to ask the question? Or am I going to start to put my hand towards my chest because I'm trying to feel from my heart to see if it feels normal, or to see if it's beating really fast? Or am I going to compulsively check my breathing? Or am I going to take that step back and say, hold on, I'm not going to do this? And it takes a lot of practice. And I tell people that it's not something you just do one time and then that's it. It is something you have to consistently do over and over and over again, because your brain has to learn that you're not going to do this anymore. So you're going to get those signals and those urges to do it, and you're going to get that initial fear, but then you have to take that step back, bring your awareness to what's happening in the moment, and then sort of shift and redirect your focus to something else other than whatever it is that you're doing or that you were
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that because it is this practice. I think we expect if I just do the right things, right? Like if I do what you're telling me, Haley, and I just slow down and I resist and then I shift my behavior, like it's magically gonna get better quickly. And it's like, no, think of how many times you've been responding in this way. And so it's really hard to get your brain to shift and break down these pathways and create new ones that don't have you automatically doing those things. And I'm glad that you brought up that your spouse sort of helped you to, respond in a healthy way where he wasn't going to give you the reassurance that you wanted, because it's like we think we need it. Like, I need it. I need you to tell me, like, I'm going to be okay or nothing bad is going to happen. And it's like, we don't need that. We want it. But that's part of that sitting with the uncertainty of like, I don't need it. And I can sit with the uncomfortable feelings. And, I always tell people if you look externally, you're going to go down even more rabbit holes and you're going to feel like, I don't got this. Like, putting all that power and trust outside of yourself is going to make you even more anxious and less confident that you can actually handle the feelings. But, just this, I don't have to check, right? I don't have to do anything about it. It sounds so simple. Like, that's just it. Like, you just tell me I have to be aware, I have to resist doing, and I just like have to get back to what I was doing. Like, it's oftentimes the really simple stuff, right, that
Yeah.
helps us the most, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. It is really, really hard, and sitting with that uncertainty is really hard, and I think, I just want people to recognize that because I think as simple as things can sound, sometimes simple doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
So, I think sometimes I'm sure in working with people, right, people have had habits and behaviors that they've been doing for a long time. And I think sometimes you can have moments where you recognize, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. Like I knew I shouldn't have checked, or I knew I shouldn't have gone to Google. Like, what do you say to that if people are like, oh, I did that and I knew I shouldn't have? Like I messed up. Like I'm back at square one, or I've taken, steps back. Like what is your response to something like that?
I always tell people, you're not at square one." We often think that because we had a setback, or we engaged in a behavior that we knew we shouldn't have done, that automatically means, "Oh, all my progress is ruined. I'm back at square one." it's completely over, and they sort of give up hope. But I try to reframe it for them and say, you're still on the right path. Just because even if you took a minor step back, that we can spin it into something positive, because at least you were aware of it, you noticed it, and we use that for the next time. Now that you're aware of it, you can work on it another time. Don't It doesn't mean you're going to fall back into all these old patterns and behaviors. There are times that I can find myself slipping back into an old pattern or behavior. And I think that's just the human experience, where we catch ourselves and we're like, okay, hold on, I'm not going to go down that path again. Even if you start to feel yourself doing that, or even if you ask for reassurance one time. It's not about being perfect at it. And I always try to remind people that you don't need to be perfect at never asking for reassurance. I think everyone to some extent has asked for reassurance at some point in their life, whether they had health anxiety or, panic disorder or generalized anxiety. You, you, Everyone has asked for reassurance at some point. Everyone has Googled something before that they know they shouldn't have done. So I always just try to remind people, don't beat yourself up over it. It's you have to try to reframe it in a positive way, and it can be hard for them to see that. So I try to be that person for them, to remind them that this is still a huge win. Like, this is a positive thing, and you'll work on it, and the next time you might not do it. So
Yeah.
we have to just keep moving forward and not throw our hands up and say, all hope is gone, I'm never going to be able to do this, or I'm never going to get through this.
Yeah, I love that. You have to let yourself be human, and I'm so glad that you are vulnerable enough to share. Like, you still have moments sometimes, right? I think this is part of being human. Like, having a little one now, I see anything relating to children and I'm like, no, 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 no. It's very quick and easy that my mind will go to certain places. And it's natural, right? We all have human brains and they want to go to those places. And it's really just practicing, like, no, we're not going there. Like,
Mhm.
what was I doing before I had these thoughts and feelings? So, something that I want to ask you that I'm really curious about, because I think you hit on it a few minutes ago, and I know it's something that many people struggle with. So, with health anxiety, it can be not just this, I'm worried about my own health and my own well-being and wanting to know that, like, I'm always going to be okay, but it goes outward to the people around us that we love most and care about most, of like, I worry about my mom's health and my sister's health, and like, I'm really caught up and I want to make sure that, like, they're okay and that they're always going to be okay. Like, can you just give a an insight or a tip, like, how can you work through that when it's outward and not so much about yourself?
Yeah, and that's hard to tolerate, the uncertainty in that aspect as well, right? Especially like you said, if you have kids, or if you're worried about your loved ones, your partner, your spouse, your parents. Like, I think that goes back to it being a very normal human experience to be worried about those things. It's just when it becomes to the point where you're constantly ruminating and obsessing over it, and it's interfering with your life. It's What I say is, like, you're always worried about the what if, what if this happens? And it's not like, okay, if something is currently happening, I have to figure it out. I have to address it right now. Like, my loved one is in the hospital right now. Of course, you're going to be worried, you're going to be upset, but that is a thing that is happening in the moment. But a lot of times people with health anxiety will worry about something that hasn't even happened yet. And what I say is that what you need to tell yourself is, in this moment they're okay. Whoever it is that you're worried about, in this moment they are okay, they're alive, they're okay. As far as I know, they're healthy. So going to that next thought is where you're going to get stuck, and where you're going to get trapped, is like, well, what if something happens to them in the next 5 minutes? What if they're in the car and they get into a car accident, and then I need to call their phone, or I need to do this, or I need to make sure they're okay. But you have to remind yourself, where is the evidence or the proof that something is not wrong? Am I getting a call from the hospital saying something's wrong? So what you have to do is essentially bring yourself back to the present moment, which is another aspect of it, which is really hard. But that is something that helped me, is saying like, what do I have? What proof do I have that something is wrong? Of course, I'm going to be worried. And the thing is, you can validate, you're always going to be worried about it, but it doesn't always have to be at the forefront of your mind every single day. When it's at the forefront of your mind every day, that's a problem, because you're obsessing about it, you're worrying about it, it's interfering with your time in the here and now. And another part of it is like, if you're, for example, if you're worried about your child, well, I'm sitting here ruminating and worrying about all these what if scenarios, which are all completely valid, but I'm looking outside of my backyard and my child is playing and having fun and laughing and smiling, and I feel like I'm missing out on those moments because I'm worrying about all these scary things that are happening or that could happen, instead of just being in the moment and saying, "Hey, she's fine. Everything's okay." And that's where I'm at right now. So,
Yeah. Oh, that present moment is such a important piece because, it's true. I remember, a lot of my journey, I always was stuck in the what ifs and I had to remind myself, right? I can't live in that space. I was always trying to figure out for the future and like I can't live in that space. And I would literally tell myself, I choose to focus on here right now because this is where I have the control. Like, I don't have the control of what could or might happen, and I don't need it. But of course, like you said, it's natural to feel upset. Like, it's natural to feel those feelings and have some of those scary thoughts. And I think, like being humans, right? Of course, we all have these thoughts sometimes and these fears because we're humans and we don't want anything to happen. And we always want everyone to be okay, including ourselves. And a lot of this, makes sense. So, I so much of what you shared has been so incredibly helpful. I like honestly can't recommend your page enough. You do so many awesome reels and carousel posts that are just so informative and relatable and helpful and practical and just like trust me guys, you will come to Haley's page and say, yeah, I she gets it and I feel seen and heard and you will get lots of helpful stuff. So Haley, thank you so much for coming on. And how can people find and connect with you? Obviously, if they want to check out your Instagram or anything else that you have going on.
yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. So you can find me on Instagram, your.anxious.therapist. And I'm on TikTok as well, and it's just your anxious therapist.
I
Well,
love
yeah,
it.
without the dots in there.
Gotcha. So, yes, definitely check Haley out. It's well worth it. And thank you again, Haley, for coming on. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Healthy Push. If you want more, head on over to ahealthypush.com for the show notes and lots more tips, tools, and inspiration that will support your recovery. And if you're hoping for me to cover a certain topic, be sure to join my Instagram community at A Healthy Push and let me know in the comments what you want to hear next.